Get ready.
Let's dig into some real use examples, and we'll start with the standard outliner effect over here. It pretty much sets the stage with the controls for all the other effects and variants and custom shapes. Okay, so let's go ahead and drag outliner, the standard outliner effect here in the classic category, to our model here with the headphones on. I'm going to use the 4K version because this is a 4K timeline we're working in. And after applying it, you'll see it shows up over here in the inspector. If you don't have the inspector open, go ahead and press Command 4, and that toggles the inspector open and closed. And if your effect shows up without any parameters beneath it, you want to go ahead and hover over the effect here in the inspector and click on Show. And I've got my inspector set to go full height all the way down to the bottom of the screen with the effects browser to the left of it. If you like that, you can just double click on the top of the inspector, and that kind of toggles a full height view. Okay, so let's dig in. The first parameter you'll see up here at the top is style. This is your first option. This is where you can choose what style outline you want to use. Line, of course, this white line is the default here, but you can also choose neon, which would probably look better with a different color. Let's go down to the color. Let's just kind of jump ahead down to the color swatch here. Click on the color swatch, and that brings up the apple picker. And I'm going to choose a blue swatch I already have in there. That looks better for neon. Other choices we have are extrude, which adds a little bit of depth to your outline. Rough, of course, just kind of a rough outline. This might look better with a little thicker outline, I think. And electric. Okay, they each have their sort of ins and outs, but I'm going to go ahead and switch it back to line. And the next control is width. This is pretty self-explanatory. We can make it thinner or thicker. And any of these sliders you can usually enter if the slider doesn't go far enough for you, if you want it like really thick, you can usually click right here in the number field and drag up and down. And this kind of, goes across just about any plugin or effect in Final Cut Pro. But I'm going to click over here on the right where you have this little triangle. And choose reset parameter. You can do that with any of these parameters if you just kind of get off and you want to reset it back to where it was, but 40 seems pretty good. Placement is the next option, and it comes in as centered. That makes sure, it kind of ensures that it always shows up even if it's a full screen video. Some of the outline will be within the view here, but usually, especially with an alpha channeled image or logo, you probably want it to be not centered on the edge of your subject, but you probably want it on the outside. Now, if for whatever reason you wanted to, you could also choose inside. We're going to go with outside. And the next option is softness, which is, again, pretty self-explanatory, I think. But that just kind of makes your outline a little soft, a little blurry. And, of course, you can make it really soft or really blurry by kind of taking this number way up there. But I'm going to reset that back to 0. Offset is how far away from the edge your outline is. So you can push this to the right and you'll get far away from your edge. Push it to the left and you'll be on the inside of your edge. I'm going to take it just a little bit off the edge. I usually like just a little bit of offset there, a little bit of space between my subject and my outline. Position. So position is, for lack of a better term, a position offset, really. So if you click on the 0 here and drag, You can offset your outline from its standard position centered on the subject, up or down. And so that gets a little weird. And how the outline is on top of her, well, there's another little checkbox here, move to background. And this is the perfect opportunity to use that. So it places your outline now behind the subject, which would also mean if you went up here and changed the placement to inside, you see the shape of it changed, but it's not technically inside your subject. But we'll put it back on outside. And I'm going to go ahead and reset the position too. I'll leave move to background on. That actually works really good with things like extrude. I'm going to switch our line style to extrude. Because if it's in the foreground, and it might work for you, it depends on what your needs are. Sometimes for text, extrude looks pretty cool in the foreground. And especially for the electric look, you want that to be in the background. Let's switch it to electric. With electric, a little reminder. First, a good wide outline works, and you usually want it on centered. And you want the offset to 0. So I'll enter a 0 there. And you want to make sure it's in the background. Now, the specific outliner effect down here is going to take care of that stuff for you. But in this standard outline effect, it's more focused on the other 4 line options. So, for electric, yep, make it a wider outline, keep it centered, and use the offset of 0. Unless you like it the other way. But that's going to give you your standard outlined electric look if you do it that way. So let's put it back on neon. Bring the width back down and put the offset back up. Opacity, that's just how transparent your outline is. It's pretty helpful with neon because it kind of adjusts the power of the neon, because you don't have a lot of little granular controls for the neon effect in here, or any of the other outline styles for that matter, since each one of them has their own specific effect. So the next option here is trace. This is available in all the effects. This kind of gives you the ability to create line art around maybe the contrasty edges of your subject or your icon maybe, or a logo. We'll get to a specific little tutorial about that later. And wriggle, this is another cool new feature here with the new outliner. This adds some animated waviness to your outline. So the farther you drive this, the bigger the waviness will be and the faster the waviness will be. Just kind of the wavy intensity, I guess you might say. So we can play a little bit of that back and see what it looks like. We'll go ahead and leave wriggle on there. And so the next option you'll see here is fill style. It defaults to color, which is just a solid color. And you can choose that right below it in the color swatch, which we looked at earlier. But you can also choose a texture. If we choose texture, it's going to look a little bit better if we don't turn neon on with all the glow. So let's switch that back to line, and we'll make it a little bit wider. So to choose the texture you want to fill your outline, you have to go down here to the texture section. It defaults to aged, but you've got a whole bunch of little textures here. One of my favorites is nylon. That's kind of just a nylon cloth texture. And you say, well, it's not blue anymore. It's just kind of a brown nylon texture. Well, that's the raw texture. If you want it to colorize it or to tint it, go down here to this next option, tint, and turn that on. And the next slider is the tint amount. You can increase that. So that's going to add some blue color to whatever your texture is. And so the next little slider you see here, threshold, this generally applies to the trace effect up top. But it does apply to outlines in general. If you're applying an outline to a solid fully opaque object with transparency, like our model here, it's not going to make much of a difference, if any. But this determines how opaque or transparent an object needs to be before an outline is applied. So if you lower the threshold or increase the threshold, it will include or not include certain areas of your image. But generally, the default is fine. Just leave it at 0.5, which is 50%. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to mention the fill style up here for outline also has a third option, custom texture. If you had a particular texture or something that you wanted to include, you've got a drop zone down here where you can click on this drop zone, and add something from your browser or from the timeline. Here, even just the background. But let's just cancel that, and we will set it back to texture. Okay, so that's it for the controls for the outline itself. The next section down here is the fill section, and that controls the source object. Yes, you can actually control the fill of the source. So it defaults to source, which is your original video or artwork, but you can also just switch it to transparent, leaving just an outline. You can switch it to color, and you have a little color choice right here, so we can make it red. And we can also switch it to texture, and it's going to put that nylon texture that we have down here selected in there. And of course you have this color swatch here still just like above. Click the tint box and you can adjust the tint amount. Okay, so let's switch it. Oh, and we also have a custom texture choice here, where if you wanted to fill it, you can see the drop zone arrow right there. If you wanted to fill it with another image, you can click on the drop zone well here and choose something from your browser or from your timeline. Let's switch it back to, we'll go with texture. We'll leave the texture in there. So now we have nylon as the outline texture and the fill texture. The opacity slider lets you change the opacity of the fill. And maybe we want to go back to source now. Okay. Oh, and we are colorizing the source. See? You can tint whatever the source is, whether it be texture. Let's untint her. You can play with the opacity. We'll leave her full though. The next section, texture, just controls whenever you select texture for any of these style choices up here, fill style. And it also has the drop zone there if you choose custom texture, like we did a second ago. You can actually change the size of the texture. Let's put the fill back on texture, and you can change the size of the fill. Maybe we'll change the texture to notebook. Now we can change the size here, and it starts to repeat just in case you make it so small. But all right, let's put the fill back on source though. So down here in the next section, source, that is our video, we can scale it. Just going to scale it, before all the effects are applied. This is great for doing picture-in-picture effects. We can actually crop our source. This is really good for picture-in-picture effects as well. But I don't think we need to crop her as she already has an alpha channel. That's pretty much it for the standard outliner effect.